The fluorescent lights of Falcon Airbase's command center cast harsh shadows on tired faces, but all eyes were glued to the front, except for Captain Elena Torres. She stood alone, shoulders squared, chin up, her Air Force blues as sharp as the contempt curling on Commander Mallory's lips. "Captain Torres, is there something you'd like to add?" Mallory asked, voice silkier than his reputation allowed. His eyes, the cold blue of glacial ice, didn't blink. Elena could feel the weight of every gaze. Her voice wanted to stick, but she forced it out. "Sir, with respect, the radar anomalies are back. The patterns, erratic pings, evasive returns, they don't match any known exercises. I've cross-checked with NASA and weather's clear. This isn't a glitch." A snort from the back of the room. Lieutenant Bowers, lounging with a mug of bad coffee, smirked for the benefit of the pilots clustered around him. "Maybe it's the Martians again, Cap. Should we scramble the X-Wings?" Laughter, quick, sharp, echoing off metal and concrete. Elena's fists curled behind her back. Her jaw ached with the effort not to snap back. She scanned the room, the younger pilots exchanging glances, Senior Brass pointedly reviewing papers, even Lieutenant Nia Park, her friend, staring at the table. No one meeting her eyes. Mallory stepped forward, hands clasped behind his back, metals glinting beneath the screens. "Let me get this straight, Captain. You're suggesting in the middle of our annual maintenance cycle that we're about to be invaded by, what? Unidentified aircraft? Alien drones? Russian prototypes maybe?" His tone made the last two words sound like a joke. "I'm saying there's a pattern," Elena said, swallowing. She pulled a tablet from under her arm and flicked through slides. Radar sweeps, timestamps, blinking red dots that never appeared in the same place twice. "Look, every anomaly lasts less than 10 seconds. Never close enough for a visual but moving faster than any storm cell. They're mapping us. Probing. This." Commander Mallory cut her off. "Enough. I've heard your concerns, Captain. I think we all have." He shot a meaningful glance at the colonel, who arched an eyebrow and gave a slight, dismissive shake of the head. "Sir," Elena started, her voice rising. Desperation prickled at the back of her throat. "That's enough." Mallory barked, and the silence that fell was thick and ugly. He walked to her, standing so close she could see the deep lines etched around his mouth. He lowered his voice, but not enough that the room couldn't hear. "You've been with us, what, 3 years, Torres? Distinguished record. But this," he waved a hand at her data, "this is not why I brought you here. You're a pilot, not an analyst. You want to chase phantoms, do it on your own time." Bowers coughed. "Somebody's seen too many spy movies." More laughter, meaner this time, tinged with something that burned. Elena's cheeks flamed, but she kept her eyes locked on Mallory's. He didn't blink. "I know what I saw," she said, softer. "And I know what's coming. If I'm wrong, I'll take the reprimand. But if I'm right. If you're right, we'll all owe you an apology. But tonight, Captain, you're dismissed from the watch. Take the rest of the night off. Clear your head." The words were a knife, twisting. Elena's mouth opened, then shut. She looked around the room one last time, at Park, who finally looked up, guilt flickering in her eyes. At Bowers, already leaning over to whisper a joke. At the blank faces of men and women who would tomorrow trust her with their lives in the air, but tonight would not trust her with their attention. She turned sharply, boots striking the concrete, and left the command center with her head high. The door thudded closed behind her, and the laughter, muted now, followed her down the hallway. Out in the night, beneath the sodium lights, Falcon Air Base was all shadows and the low hum of generators. Elena pressed her back to the wall, breathing hard. The cool desert wind licked her face, and she looked up at the stars, clear, bright, and uncaring. A radio on her hip crackled. "Control to Captain Torres? Elena, you there?" She hesitated, then thumbed the button. "This is Torres." It was Park. Her voice was tight, barely above a whisper. "Elena, I'm sorry. I tried." "It's okay," Elena said, forcing steadiness. "They made up their minds before I opened my mouth." Silence. Then, "You sure you're not just tired? You've been flying a lot of nights." "Maybe." Elena closed her eyes, fighting the urge to scream. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm the only one who's paying attention." Footsteps echoed behind her, Mallory striding down the hall, his face stony as he passed. He didn't look at her. She let the silence fill her. The ache in her chest was worse than any physical wound. Alone again. From somewhere far off, a dog barked. Jets, lined up on the runway, gleamed under the security lights. They looked so peaceful, like steel birds at rest. But Elena saw them as they really were, vulnerable, exposed. She pressed her palm to the cold concrete. I'm not crazy, she whispered to the dark. Something's coming. I know it. Far above, a satellite winked past the stars, a silent watcher. Elena squared her shoulders, wiped her eyes, and started back toward the barracks, already planning what she'd do next. The sky was just as silent as the people she'd left behind. But she knew, both could erupt at any moment. The next morning, the air at Falcon Air Base felt heavier than usual. Elena Torres walked to the hangar with her cap pulled low, the desert sun already baking the tarmac. Every step felt like a spotlight, every glance a judgment. She'd barely slept. The echoes of last night's laughter haunted her dreams. Inside, the hangar was alive with noise, wrenches clinking, music playing low on someone's speaker, techs and pilots laughing in tight little knots. Elena paused, scanning the room. No one called her over. She made her way to her fighter, a matte gray F-39, running her fingers over its wing as if greeting an old friend. She let her hand linger there, eyes closed, grounding herself. The world made sense up here, clean, predictable, no place for doubt. Cap. You lose a bet or something? Bauer's voice floated over, oily and too loud. He and a couple of junior pilots stood by the lockers, pretending not to watch her. One mimed holding binoculars, the others snickered. Elena straightened. Just checking on my bird, Lieutenant. Some of us like to be ready for the unexpected. Yeah, about that, Bowers smirked. Heard Mallory's giving you some R&R. Maybe you'll finally catch up on sleep. Or conspiracy forums. She stared him down, unblinking. Better safe than sorry. He didn't answer, but she saw the way he nudged the others, their laughter fading as she turned away. She could feel their stares all the way out the hangar doors. In the mess hall, Elena sat alone at the edge of a long, battered table, hunched over a tray of eggs gone cold. She scrolled through last night's radar data on her tablet, frustration gnawing at her. All the signs were there, spikes, pings, ghost echoes that didn't fit any known pattern. She tapped out a message to her only ally left, Lieutenant Nia Park. Nia, can you double-check last night's radar logs? I swear I'm not seeing things. Just need a second pair of eyes. Minutes ticked by. No reply. The ache of betrayal pressed in. A pair of footsteps, tentative. Elena looked up, heart lifting then falling. It was Sergeant Flores, the youngest mechanic. He hesitated, tray in hand. Is this seat taken, ma'am? He asked, voice soft. She shook her head, managed a smile. Help yourself, Flores. He slid in, eyes darting between her and the other tables. I overheard some of what you said last night. About the radar. That's not normal, right? She felt hope flicker, small but alive. No, it's not. And no one else seems to care. He hesitated, then leaned in. I think you're right to worry. Yesterday I found weird scorch marks on the tail of Jet 17. Not from a bird strike, not weather. I logged it, but they said it's just a maintenance error. Elena sat up straighter. Can you show me? He nodded. After lunch. But, if anyone asks, I was just fixing a panel. Don't want trouble. Don't worry. I'm used to trouble, she said, but her voice was soft. An hour later, in the shadow of Jet 17, Flores pointed out a set of jagged blackened lines near the tail, deep, unnatural burns. Elena snapped photos, her mind racing. Something was out there, close enough to touch the planes. A shout from across the hangar. Chief Warrant Officer Gibson, clipboard in hand, stalked over. Torres? Flores? We got a problem? No, sir, Elena replied, tucking her phone away. Just double-checking a maintenance report. Gibson's eyes narrowed. You're not on the flight roster, Captain. I suggest you find something else to occupy your time. Yes, sir. She forced herself to hold his gaze, even as Flores shrank away. As they left, Flores whispered, Sorry, ma'am. Didn't mean to get you in trouble. You didn't, Elena said. They already made up their minds. The day bled into evening. Elena retreated to her quarters, a cramped dorm room lined with medals, flight patches, and a single framed photo. Her and her father, both in uniform, smiling on her first solo flight. He'd always said, sometimes you're the only one who sees the storm coming. That's when you stand the tallest. She opened her laptop, pulling up every report she could, satellite data, old pilot logs, maintenance records. She built a secret dossier, cross-referencing every anomaly and incident she could find. Her mind whirled with numbers and possibilities. Her phone vibrated. A message from Nia, finally. Elena, I can't help you anymore. Mallory's on my case. Please, just let this go. Elena stared at the screen until the words blurred. Even Nia was gone. For a moment, the doubt threatened to drown her. Maybe she was seeing patterns where there were none. Maybe the stress had finally cracked her open. She stood, pacing. Her reflection in the window looked back, dark hair tangled, eyes burning, stubbornness etched deep. She pressed a fist to her chest, where fear and determination battled for ground. Something flickered outside, distant headlights moving across the runway. She watched them go, the loneliness settling like a second skin. She pulled out her notebook and started writing down everything she knew, every question she needed answered. If no one else would help, she'd find the truth herself. Tomorrow she'd check the logs again. Tomorrow she'd be ready. Alone but unbroken. Midnight cloaked Falcon Air Base in uneasy silence, the heat of the day replaced by a desert chill. Elena Torres moved like a shadow through the maintenance hangar, her boots muffled by the concrete. She glanced over her shoulder. No one. She was supposed to be off duty, but sleep felt impossible. The burden of what she'd discovered pressed her onward, past the point of exhaustion. Her F-39 sat in the far corner, the only machine she trusted. She ran her hand along the nose cone, whispering to it like an old friend. Just you and me, Bird. Let's be ready. She opened the access panel, working by the soft glow of her phone's flashlight. She checked every system, fuel lines, hydraulics, missile racks. She double-checked the failsafe code she'd programmed. One touch and her jet would be combat-ready, engines live, comms open. She'd catch hell if anyone found out, but the alternative was worse. A clatter startled her. She froze, heart thundering, then saw Sergeant Flores peeking around a stack of crates, tool bags slung over his shoulder. He looked nervous. Sorry, ma'am. Didn't mean to scare you. I brought those diagnostic chips you asked for. Relief and gratitude warred in her chest. Thank you, Flores. I owe you one. He set to work beside her, hands deft and quiet. You really think something's coming? I know it, Elena whispered, voice trembling. The marks on Jet 17. The radar hits. It's not an accident, not a malfunction. We're being probed, mapped out. No one wants to see it. Flores swallowed. What do we do? Elena hesitated, staring at the half-lit silhouette of her jet. We prepare. Quietly. If it's nothing, no one gets hurt. If I'm right, at least we'll have a fighting chance. They worked in tense silence. Flores reprogrammed the targeting computer, bypassing certain security protocols. Elena snuck glances at the security cameras, praying no one would see their late-night repairs. She stashed extra flares, checked emergency comms, even tucked away a battered first-aid kit behind her seat. After an hour, Flores wiped sweat from his brow. This could cost us our stripes. I know, Elena said. You don't have to help. He shook his head, determined. Somebody's gotta believe you. She felt tears prick her eyes but blinked them away. Thank you, Flores. Seriously. He nodded and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Elena alone again. The next day she avoided the command center. Instead, she spent every free minute cross-checking weather forecasts, flight logs and maintenance reports on her tablet, hunting for the smallest clue. The more she found, tiny inconsistencies, unexplained system resets, even rumors of a brief radio blackout in a nearby town, the more certain she became. But the isolation cut deep. At lunch, the tables seemed further apart. Conversations died when she walked by. Park, her old friend, wouldn't even look her way. The walls felt like they were closing in. She pushed through. In the base's forgotten corners, empty offices, old supply closets, she drew up battle plans. She mapped out the base's air defenses, figured out fallback points and safe zones. She made lists of who she could trust, Flores, maybe one or two others, and who she could not, nearly everyone else. One afternoon, while checking the armory manifest, she found a box of emergency signal flares signed out under a false name, her name. Her hands shook as she realized. Someone wanted to make her look reckless, or sabotage her if she pushed further. She pocketed the evidence, jaw clenched. They could mock her all they wanted, but she'd be damned if she'd let them ruin her reputation. Late that night, as storm clouds gathered over the mountains, Elena returned to the hangar. The base was eerily quiet. Even the guards seemed restless, watching the sky with haunted eyes. She climbed into her jet's cockpit, running through emergency checklists by rote. She let her hands move, muscle memory taking over as her mind spun. What if she was wrong? What if she was losing her mind and dragging Flores down with her? But she remembered her father's words, storm coming, stand tall. She wiped her eyes and forced herself to focus. She left a note tucked behind the comm panel for Park. If anything happens, trust your gut. Find me in Hangar 7. Be ready. As she climbed down, she stared out at the silent airfield, rows of steel birds, sleeping under the gathering storm. She shivered. Was she preparing for nothing, or was she the only one keeping them all alive? The wind picked up, rattling the flagpole, making the hangar doors tremble. Elena looked to the sky, saw lightning flicker on the horizon, and felt something shift deep inside her. Doubt and fear still gnawed at her, but something else burned brighter. A stubborn hope, a defiant need to protect the base, even if she had to do it alone. She walked back to her quarters, shoulders squared against the cold, praying she'd never need the preparations she'd made, but determined if the time came to be ready. In the empty barracks, Elena sat by her window, listening to the distant rumble of thunder, writing one final message in her secret dossier. I don't know if anyone will read this, but I couldn't stand by and do nothing. If you're reading this, be braver than I was. Trust the signs. The sky isn't as empty as we think. She closed the laptop, slid it under her bunk, and lay back in the darkness, heart racing, mind running through plans and worst-case scenarios. The silence felt absolute. But this time, as she drifted toward sleep, Elena felt a quiet strength settle in her chest, a sense that, come what may, she was ready. The storm broke at 3:17 a.m. Lightning forked through the clouds over Falcon Air Base, thunder rolling in on a cold wind. Elena sat bolt upright in her bunk, every muscle tensed. The alarm didn't sound, but her phone vibrated, a silent warning. Flores text, just 2 words. It's happening. Outside, a low, unnatural rumble built in the air, so deep she felt it in her bones. For one suspended moment, the whole base seemed to hold its breath. Then the world exploded. An unholy roar shattered the silence. Missiles screaming down from the clouds, slamming into the north perimeter. The earth shook. Windows burst. Elena was out of bed and into her boots before the second blast. Shouts echoed down the halls, fear, confusion, orders lost in the chaos. She sprinted for the hangar, adrenaline blazing through her veins. The sky above was a war zone, tracers slashing red and white across black, enemy jets dropping from the clouds like wolves on a flock. Sirens finally wailed, too late. A cluster of pilots ran past, wild-eyed and half-dressed, but Elena didn't stop. Hangar 7 loomed ahead, shrapnel and smoke already streaking its walls. She burst inside and skidded to a halt. Flores was waiting by her jet, eyes huge. Everything's ready, he panted. You sure about this? It's now or never, Elena gasped. Get to cover. Don't wait for me. He hesitated, then pressed a radio into her hand. I'll monitor comms. Watch your 6, Captain. She clambered into the cockpit, hands moving on pure instinct, canopy down, power on, systems hot. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. She switched to the emergency frequency and prayed someone would answer. Control, this is Captain Torres in Delta 6. Taking off. Do not, I repeat, do not cluster on the runways. Enemy aircraft inbound. Evacuate ground crews, get pilots to their birds. Static. Then a panicked voice. Someone in control, maybe Park. Delta 6, this is Falcon, we're under attack. Multiple bogies, systems failing, Mallory is down. Elena grit her teeth, punched the afterburner. The F-39 screamed down the ruined tarmac, dodging burning debris and the hulk of a shattered fuel truck. As her wheels left the ground, a wall of fire chased her skyward. In the air, everything was chaos. 20, maybe 30 enemy jets sliced through the clouds, flying in brutal, precise formation. Falcons blazed, scrambling to organize. Elena's headset crackled with terrified voices. She took command, voice cutting through the panic. All pilots, this is Torres. Split to grid 6. Flank right, keep your altitude. Flores, patch me into ground defense, now. On the ground, anti-air batteries spat flame, but the enemy jets moved too fast, ducking through gaps, loosing missiles at radar towers and fuel stores. Elena spotted one jet barreling for the command center, trailing smoke. She banked hard, cut across its path, locked, fired. The missile tracked true, blowing the attacker apart. The blast rocked her, shards of metal pinging off her fuselage. She barely had time to breathe before 2 more jets dove for her. Elena rolled, corkscrewed through tracer fire, flares blooming behind her. Her hands worked the stick and throttle like an extension of her soul. On the radio, chaos reigned, some voices screaming, others deadly calm. Flores patched her into a backup channel, and suddenly Park's voice was there, strained but determined. Elena. You were right. I'm at South Defense. Mallory's down, Bowers is missing. What do we do? Elena's brain raced. Get all available pilots to birds. Don't wait for orders. Follow the plan, Grid 6, fall back to hangar perimeter, use the south runways. I'll draw them north. Copy that, Park replied, her voice steadier now. Good luck. Enemy jets swarmed her, their pilots sharp, relentless. Elena dodged, feinted, lured them away from the cluster of scrambling Falcons. She dipped into a pocket of smoke, then streaked skyward, climbing into the clouds. A split-second scan, 3 bogies on her tail. She breathed deep, closed her eyes for half a heartbeat, let her instincts take over. Her father's voice as clear as if he sat beside her. Trust your training. Fly the storm. She cut her throttle, air brakes out, her jet dropped like a stone. The enemy pilots overshot, flashing past. She swung behind the lead, locked on, fired, one down then another. The third broke left, running for the open sky. The radio crackled. Falcon, this is Delta 6, we're clear to move. Go, go, go. Below, the base was ablaze, but now Falcon jets launched in 2s and 3s, their engines howling. Elena's heart soared as Park's voice sounded again, steady and strong. Delta 6, we're airborne. Heading for Grid 6. For 20 more minutes, Elena fought, a whirlwind of missiles, tracer fire, fear and fury. She pushed herself and her machine to the edge, thinking only of keeping the enemy away from her people, her base, her only home. At last the tide turned. Falcons, rallied by her voice and plan, circled the battered airfield, hunting the remaining attackers. Elena engaged the enemy ace in a final, deadly duel, twisting through clouds lit by fire and lightning. They traded shots, every move desperate and precise. Her jet took a hit, a red warning light screamed, smoke trailing behind. She gritted her teeth, refused to yield. She led her opponent into the line of Falcon anti-air, then juked left at the last second. The enemy pilot wasn't so lucky. Ground fire tore the jet apart in a shower of sparks. Elena limped her wounded bird back toward the airfield. The flames still burned, but the worst was over. Falcon soared above, battered but alive. Elena felt tears, raw, grateful, exhausted, blur her vision. She touched down on ruined tarmac as the sun began to rise, the sky painted gold and orange behind the carnage. The base had survived. Against all odds, they were still standing. As she climbed from her jet, legs trembling, she saw Park, Flores, and a half-dozen pilots waiting. No one spoke. They just looked at her, awe and gratitude shining through the grime and ash. Elena met their gaze, pride and sorrow tangled in her chest. She'd saved them, not alone, but because she dared to be ready when no one else would. The sky still crackled with fire, but for the first time, Elena saw hope burning there too. Dawn came slowly over Falcon Air Base, painting the sky with streaks of gold and rose, the colors bright against the charred, smoking ruins. Sirens still wailed in the distance, their wail almost mournful, but the worst was over. Fire crews battled blazes along the north perimeter, the echo of explosions fading. Elena Torres stood on the ruined tarmac beside her battered jet, helmet tucked under one arm, legs trembling with exhaustion. She tasted ash on her tongue and sweat on her lips. The adrenaline was gone now, replaced by a heavy, aching fatigue that seeped into her bones. Her uniform was streaked with soot, her knuckles raw and bleeding. But she was alive. They were alive. All around her, the survivors gathered in silent knots, pilots, techs, mechanics, a handful of medics moving from group to group, bandaging wounds, counting heads. The night's terror still shone in their eyes. Some wept openly, others stared at the rising sun as if not believing they'd lived to see it. Commander Mallory was among them, a gash over one eyebrow, his uniform torn. He leaned heavily on a medic, but when he saw Elena, he straightened, face working through a dozen emotions, pride, relief, shame. He hobbled over, every eye on him, every ear straining for what he'd say. He stopped in front of Elena, silent for a long moment. "You saved us, Captain Torres." His voice was hoarse, stripped of all authority, just a man speaking truth. "None of us listened. We failed you. I failed you." The base was silent. No laughter now, no dismissive jokes, just the weight of everything unsaid. Elena held his gaze, anger and relief swirling inside her. "You believed what you wanted to believe, sir. But this is my home too. I couldn't just stand by." Mallory's jaw clenched. "From this day you'll never be dismissed again." He glanced at the cluster of officers, Park, Bowers, Gibson, all battered and changed. "From now on we listen. We prepare." He turned away, but not before squeezing her shoulder, gratitude shining in his eyes. The survivors assembled for a head count, and Elena found herself at the center of it all, fielding questions, relaying orders. The chaos was different now. Purposeful, united, every hand working to restore, to heal. Flores found her, his arm in a sling. "You did it," he whispered, voice thick. "We did it," she corrected, squeezing his good hand. "I couldn't have done it alone." He grinned, tears shining in his eyes. "Don't let them forget, Captain." News of the attack spread by midday, higher command called in, reporters circling. But Elena kept her distance, helping where she could, comforting the grieving, checking on her jet as mechanics patched its wounds. Her secret dossier, the one she'd built in isolation, was now passed from hand to hand, the key to the mystery they'd all ignored. Park found her by the wrecked fuel depot, face pale but determined. "I'm sorry," she said simply, "for not believing you." Elena smiled, weary but genuine. "We survived. That's what matters." Park nodded, then, after a moment's hesitation, embraced her. Elena let herself be held, for just a moment, letting the tension finally begin to melt away. In the afternoon, a ceremony, makeshift and unplanned but heartfelt. The base's battered survivors gathered by the flagpole, the stars and stripes scorched but flying. Mallory addressed them, his voice steady. "This base stands today because one of us refused to be ignored," he said. "Let Captain Torres be our example. Listen to the warning even if it's hard to hear. Trust the brave. Prepare for the storm even if you stand alone." Elena felt a strange heat rise in her chest as the crowd broke into applause, not just polite but thunderous, sustained, a wave of gratitude and pride. She raised her eyes to the sky, blinking back tears. As dusk approached, Elena wandered the quiet runway, watching the sunset blaze over the mountains, the world softening in gold and purple light. Her fighter rested nearby, patched and refueled as if waiting for her next command. She thought of her father, his words echoing softly, "Sometimes you're the only one who sees the storm coming." She smiled, a tired, fierce smile. The loneliness hadn't broken her. She'd done what she had to do, and now, because of her, they all had a chance to fight another day. She looked up, watching the first stars appear. The scars of the battle would remain, on the base, on her body, in her heart. But she felt something else, too. Respect, camaraderie, the beginning of trust. A new day was coming. And this time they would be ready. Elena squared her shoulders, breathing in the cooling air, and began the long walk back. She was no longer alone. She was home.